A wonderful day, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Raymond with AvePoint, and we're very excited today to have a phenomenal conversation with friends from Avanade and Microsoft to talk about Microsoft Teams. Since Teams came out in preview late October, there's been a lot of buzz, a lot of great feedback, and recently Teams went GA, and boy, we've seen a lot of love and excitement from the broader community. So how better for us to learn more about it and really talk about what we have today and what we can expect in the future. We've got our colleagues with us here, Dan from Microsoft and Michelle from Avanade, so this is exciting. As we go through the presentation today, just a highlight of the agenda. Obviously, we'll get to meet our colleagues. We'll talk about what the world is like today around collaboration. Michelle will share their experience at Avanade and as how they work with customers, and more importantly, where Teams fit in this picture. And then Dan will provide an overview of Microsoft Teams, talk about the business value and typical use cases that customers are leveraging Teams for and what's coming. And I'll spend a few minutes just talking about when to use what. We've gotten a lot of great questions prior to this webinar. People are asking about, well, Teams is great. How does it fall in line with all the other workloads in Office 365? So I'll chat about that briefly and how it relates to other technologies like Groups and SharePoint in general. And then we'll open it up for our Q&A and panel discussion. So with that, just a quick introduction to everybody. Again, my name is Dux. I serve as the CTO here at AvePoint. Very grateful to be a Microsoft MVP and Regional Director, and been working in this field for over 15, 16 years. So again, thank you for joining us. Hey, Dan, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, hey, thank you, Dux. My name is Dan Stevenson. Very excited to be here with everybody. I work at Microsoft on Microsoft Teams. I'm one of the product management technical managers for a good chunk of the product, as well as our customer engagement programs. And I've been at Microsoft actually 14 years now, as of 2 days from now. And I previously worked in Skype for Business and a few other products.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Michelle, welcome.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dux. Thanks, Dan. My name is Michelle Caldwell, and I work at Avanade. And my day job at Avanade is I'm our North America Digital Workplace Director. And I'm also honored to be a Microsoft MVP and Regional Director. So thanks for joining us this morning. And I guess it's morning for me, not morning for everybody, because I'm on the West Coast. And let's go ahead and move into the modern collaboration journey. So I work with clients every day on how collaboration has changed, and we're going to talk about that to kind of introduce us into this topic around Teams. So today's collaboration has changed a lot, and I was thinking about this as we were getting ready for this webinar, and just the context of even how my own collaboration working at organizations over the last 15 years has changed, and how I work with different teams. And the technology has just really changed the way that we're able to collaborate. Things like smart technologies, AI, cloud computing, if we think about bots and things like that, these things weren't even around 10 or 15 years ago. The experience has evolved dramatically. I was out hiking in Camelback Mountain yesterday, and my partner I was hiking with got a Skype call at right close to the summit, and I'm like, 10 years ago we couldn't have been doing this. You couldn't have been working while hiking Camelback Mountain and being able to have a business conversation at the same time. Now more than ever, it's considered business critical. We're so used to having access now to so many different consumer-based experiences that are in some cases higher grade in the past than what we've been able to get a hold of within the enterprise, that it's really changed the way that we look at how important it is to provide a good collaboration experience to our employees. Employees actually care about their collaboration environments. And we'll talk here in a few minutes about the generational differences and how they look at this kind of stuff. But the younger generations really do care about having frictionless collaboration and ways to do that in a very simple way. And businesses must empower their employees. There's no one-size-fits-all anymore about how teams want to work together, so giving them the opportunity to select what's going to work best for them. And when we get into the use cases, Dan will walk through some of what he's seeing and how people are choosing those journeys. But being able to have the options for teams to choose how they want to best work together is really important. So it's not what it used to be. Content creation is more than just Word and Excel or PowerPoint. The way that we create content has changed a lot over the years and will continue to rapidly transform. It's not just about meeting rooms and email threads anymore, or text messages, or Skype, or video chats. There's so many different ways, so many different channels in which we can collaborate. Being able to bring that in all into one cohesive experience is something now that I see a lot of businesses are trying to get a handle on. And I think what you'll see today is that Teams has the capability of bringing many channels together for teams to get their work done. Ideation is no longer just about Post-it notes. For those of you that know me and have worked with me in the past know I'm a huge fan of Post-it notes. I'm an innovation games facilitator and design-led thinking facilitator, and all that stuff really requires a lot of that hands-on Post-it collaboration, but ideation is done in so many different ways nowadays that it's not exclusively Post-it note only territory anymore. No longer done just in location. Work can be done anywhere. An example I mentioned earlier, hiking up a mountain, and people want to be able to work in a flexible manner. And most organizations are really looking at how do I free up my employees to work with in times best for them, in ways best for them, and in locations best for them. Working is not just sitting at your desktop or your laptop. It's almost table stakes really to have something that considers mobility and multi-channel or multi-device nowadays. Organizations that don't empower that are having a really hard time retaining talent and attracting new talent. So it's no longer something that's a nice to have. It must be part of what you're thinking about when you're thinking about collaboration. Knowledge management is more than just structured folders or huge file shares. There is so much knowledge being captured now in so many different channels. I talk to customers all the time about those that are using enterprise social channels like Yammer, and then so much knowledge being shared over things like IM and chat and email and in documents. How do they really take advantage of that? Oh, and I'm going to forward my slide here. And then lastly on this slide, employees demand environments which make it easy for them to collaborate. It's not just about technology. We really have to think about, when we're thinking about how do we provide an environment where our employees can get their work done in a way that feels empowered and frictionless. We really have to look at how teams work together. No two teams typically will collaborate exactly in the same manner. And we'll talk a little bit about a couple of examples of some team collaboration journeys here in a moment. We really need to look at the ways in which they communicate, how they share and capture knowledge. Again, I don't see that being a massive one-size-fits-all within organizations anymore. It's becoming harder to have that right answer that will suit everyone. So having a way in which your knowledge management policies can be flexible to support how teams are doing that knowledge capture and sharing is really important. How people are connecting within and outside of your organization to get that work done. Sharing and openness, this is a big trend with the younger generations. They don't work in a siloed environment. They share to learn. They ask a lot of questions. They're not afraid to be really open and transparent about things they do know and things they don't know. So being able to have environments where that can be supported is important. Culture, I say this a lot to people when I go work with them. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? You can have the best laid plans, but if you ignore your culture and you don't pay attention to how are people actually working today, and where could we have opportunities to enhance that or evolve that, you'll be missing out on a major opportunity. Mindset and then experience are also big factors in how we approach modern collaboration. Technology is important. I don't want to say that it's not. This whole call is about teams and not the technology. It's an enabler, though. We have to understand how our teams want to work together so that we can best plug in that technology to support and guide that collaborative environment. It can also move faster than your business. A lot of customers are struggling with the pace of Office 365 and how much new stuff is coming through every day, every week, every month. You can build strategies to help with this. At Avanade, we are our tenants mostly default, on by default with new capabilities. There's been a couple technologies rolling the last year that we opted to turn off for a little bit of time to have strategies around. For us, those were things like Delve. We had some things when Delve came on by default that we realized some of our security wasn't exactly as tight on some of our content as we thought, so we had to roll it back and rethink our strategies against how we were handling our content management and knowledge management and how we were protecting certain types of data. So completely can empathize with what organizations are going through on that front, but having strategies around the capabilities that may be disruptive versus ones that might be enablers, it's important to identify the difference. We've talked a little bit about culture this morning already, so being really honed in and understanding your culture. And culture within certain teams can be very different. Again, I see less and less of one corporate culture is really the way to make these decisions, understanding team by team or group by group, the subcultures that are there, especially when we look at technologies like Teams and how those can just best be leveraged. And then supporting our business, tie some of these capabilities and enablers to our overall business strategies, that it helps us to ensure that we continue to get executive support when we're looking at rolling out new technologies like Teams. So a couple months ago, there was a talk that one of my colleagues did with this team around groups. Victor Whalen is also another MVP that works at Avanade, and I had updated this content to reflect the U.S. Workforce. The one that we did a couple months ago reflected the U.K. workforce. And the numbers were pretty close, but they were slightly different. We do have a larger percentage of Generation X and Y and Z workers in our workforce already than in the UK. So this becomes even more relevant to the US workforce and Canada workforce that may be sitting on this call today, that we have more of the younger workforce mix in our workforce today, where technology like Teams really enable them to kind of create their own collaboration journey. The study, there's a white paper that Bruce Holgan, I got this data from, and he talks about in great detail how these younger generations expect to be able to collaborate. They like to, especially that Generation Z, likes to create their own experiences based on their needs and can switch pretty quickly from modality and channel. So there's really no one size fits all for them. They're used to selecting what works for the moment. So things like Teams really help support those younger generational workforces and being able to create the environment that they'd like to have in order to get their work done. So it's a journey. I see less and less too of these big bang kind of transformation initiatives at organizations that we work with. Most organizations now are looking at, when they're on Office 365, how do we evolve our environment? How do we take the time to almost kind of rapidly prototype thoughts and ideas with particular teams that are best suited to take on this new capability or this new experience, learn from that, iterate, and then be able to roll that out to a larger audience within their organizations. So really taking the time and understanding that if you don't get it completely right the first time, you can always get the feedback and come back around with an evolved solution based on these technologies. And then from our point of view at Avanade, technology can be the enabler of that kind of modern collaboration experience, and it can support a lot of modalities. The big thing I'd stress here is just having a strategy and understanding the things that allow for context switching, being flexible enough in your plans to understand that. Being able to allow different journeys, again, back to that no one size fits all anymore. I really don't see that being a successful approach anymore to modern collaboration in most organizations. So understanding that there are different journeys and even mapping some of those so you understand them more deeply is really important. And then for many cultures, there has to be many ways of getting work done. Back to the no one direction for any one culture. There's many subcultures within many organizations, and we do have to consider that when we're building our solutions. So first steps, create a vision and strategy. Listen to your employees. Get a subgroup of employees. We have many subgroups of employees at Avanade because we dog food everything Office 365, including Dynamics and Power Apps. And we have these subgroups. We actually use Teams for it, funny enough, that are like the Fab 50 for this particular capability. And we get their feedback on how they're using it and get better insight on use cases and successes they're having in areas where they're actually not having success, so we can better position the technologies even within our own organization. Fail fast and learn, I talked about that a little bit. Just, try to take on that more agile, iterative approach when you're using these new capabilities. Try something out. If it doesn't work out, learn from it and evolve from there. Embrace the change, and if your employees are happy, your business will succeed. Giving your employees the flexibility, they know best how to get their work done and what they need in order to do it. So enabling that for them will be a big success for your business. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dan, and he's going to walk us through some use cases, and I think he's going to give us a live peek at Teams for those of you that haven't seen it or haven't been using it yet. With that, Dan, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So again, I'm very excited to be here talking to everybody about Microsoft Teams. It's not only my favorite product to work on, it's my favorite product to use and talk about. You're likely familiar with the concept of the Office 365 collaboration portfolio. We've been in this space delivering tools for a while, as we just heard, across a number of different scenarios. And lately, the last couple of years or so, we've recognized that there's this emerging requirement for these high-velocity team collaboration situations where you have a really focused team that needs to share information, reach decisions and conclusions quickly, have everything they need together in one place to get things done. And a key facet of that, and it's not beating around the bush. There certainly are companies out there that have been doing this for a while, as have we actually with our on-premises PChat product. But a key facet of that is chat as the core experience. And so we looked at that and realized that we had a gap in our portfolio. We wanted to create a product centered around chat for these high-velocity teams and add Microsoft Teams in alongside other applications that serve different requirements. And we can get into some of that in the Q&A. The general philosophy is that we have these swim lanes for our different applications. Yammer is a great example of a product that works well in an enterprise social environment, and we have plenty of use cases, including several of my own, where I integrate Yammer as a reach capability, of a kind of a broad and shallow reach capability alongside my higher velocity, more focused and highly engaged Teams capabilities. Let me talk through where we are with Teams in terms of what the value prop is and what we're focused on. And then when we get into the demo, I'll call these out as I walk through them. First is chat. We built everything around chat. Hub for Teamwork means that everything else a team needs is there for them at their fingertips in the chat and around it. You'll see this in the demo. Customizable, this lets us bring in a whole variety of third-party applications, including some from Microsoft, and services through tabs, connectors, and bots, as well as a great SDK for extensibility. And last, security means it's built on Office 365. It's something that everybody kind of takes for granted, but the security compliance and other capabilities are really critical there. Okay, we've heard a few of the examples of different types of teams and how people can use these products, these collaboration products in different scenarios. Obviously, a lot of people focus on developer scenarios. That's a very common use case for chat. It has been for decades, in fact. And with the advent of Agile, Scrums, pair programming, et cetera, there's a lot more collaboration within the developer space. But this type of product in Microsoft Teams is actually very applicable across a broader set of use cases. We see it in our customers. We see it in our own company across finance, sales, marketing, project management outside of the tech space, and so on. And especially when you add in the capability to customize the workspace, create different channels, create multiple teams, bring in tabs for all sorts of applications and documents, it becomes really a hub for anybody who's working on a team in front of a computer or a phone to bring everything they need together centered around chat. There's some examples here of different types of scenarios that work with that. Rather than examples, though, I think I'd like to cut into an actual demo. So I'm just going to pop over here to my Teams client, start the screen sharing. I'm going to start talking, and my co-presenters just let me know in the chat if there's any issues with the screen sharing. So here I am. This is Microsoft Teams. If we were live, in person, I would ask you to raise your hand if you've used the product. If you haven't, it's very easy to get to in Office 365. It's in the product launcher, the application tiles, or you can go to teams.microsoft.com. Later on, I have some slides where I can talk about some of the technical dependencies and architecture and prereqs as well. So what I'm looking at here is the Microsoft Teams Windows desktop application. We have desktop applications for Mac and, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. We have desktop applications for Mac and for Windows, and a web application, which is kind of like the slightly junior sibling to the desktop applications. The web apps actually are wrapped into the desktop app. Then we also have mobile apps for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone, fully native, continuing to evolve and develop and available in the App Store. Here I'm in the view of what we call the Teams view. And in fact, there's a number of different application capabilities within Teams. The one I'm looking at here is Teams. We also have private chats. We have meetings, files. I'll talk through all those over the course of the demo. You can see here, I have a list of the teams that I'm on. I'm on a few teams. Typically, people are on 3, 4 teams, maybe a few more. Within the team, you notice I've got these kind of buckets or folders. These are called channels. This is a convenient thing we set up to make it easy to manage the different topics, different areas within a team without having people trip over each other. From a deployment perspective, we're very happy to recommend types of channels that make sense for certain teams, but the most success happens when you let the team create their own channels and evolve over time versus doing kind of a top-down directive of how to set up those channels. You can see I've got a few of them here that have been set up and created for me. And then here I'm actually in this general channel for the product development team. Every team comes with a general channel. And you notice that it's chat, so you can see chat messages going back and forth, but it's a little richer than chat too. I've got like a Power BI in the middle of my chat. I've got a Word doc in the middle of my chat. I have some kind of a service. I have some rich text. I've got a bot or two talking to me. I've got a cute sticker telling me something funny. Just a whole bunch of stuff going on that's far more than just chat. That's a really important part of our core experience. Obviously, we start with chat. Chat, for those who've used it, and almost everybody has used it, at least in a social and personal context, it's this very low overhead, low friction way of sharing information, quickly getting in touch with somebody, getting a group of people together on the same page. So we took that as a given. We've added a few things to the chat. We have rich text formatting. I can show you what that looks like here. So you can bullets and numbers and bold and italics and stuff. We added emojis, of course, and this comes from our shared technical and experiential heritage with Skype and Skype for Business. We added animated GIFs, which are just a funny way of bringing a little bit of social experience and emotive content into chat. One of the challenges with chat is that it can be, it's words on a screen, and if you try to just use words to create emotional content, it often comes across as sarcasm, which may be the intent, but often is not. And so we wanted to, between the Giphies and some of these stickers here, you saw an example earlier, and the emojis, we wanted to give teams the ability to express themselves a little more richly, and a little more kind of social and emotional value there. And we found that that is super popular among teams. Not every team, granted, and that's why we have settings around these, and you can turn them off or ratchet them down. But certainly within a lot of teams, this is super popular. Now, one of the things that you saw when I was going through here was my name called out in red. And that's because somebody was doing what's called @mentioning. They were trying to get in touch with me and tell me that there was something for me to pay attention to. And I can do the same back to them. The chat messages happen in a very open environment, right? It's everything on this team is visible to everybody within this team. I'm not expected to necessarily go through every chat and channel message and see what's going on, but I can favorite some channels. I can follow them as well and get notifications when new messages are posted there. And I can look for my @mentions as a way to see if somebody's trying to get in touch with me. In fact, over here on this channel, it looks like somebody was just recently trying to get in touch with me. And you can see that I've got a couple of @mentions called out. Now that I've been in here and read them, that's cleared. I can always go to the activity bar here, activity feed here, and see a list of all of the notifications that have come in for me, whether somebody liked a message or replied to a message or @mentioned me. I can also follow a channel, etc. These are all tunable and available in our mobile apps as well. I'll go back into that channel, though, and just show you a few things here. This is a document that's in a chat. Now, this is kind of interesting. It's a chat message, but it has a document as essentially the start of the thread. All of our conversations are threaded, of course, to make it easier to organize your topics. When I click on that, it's actually going to stay within Microsoft Teams and open up that document for me using the embedded PowerPoint viewer. So you can see that here, and then if I wanted to, I can, of course, pop out and edit it in PowerPoint or in the PowerPoint web app if I wanted to. Or I can go through the slides and view them here. But most critically, over here, under this button here for chat, I have the exact same chat stream that was in the main conversation view aligned here with next to the document. It's something that I can actually talk about. This is very, very powerful. I've got not just what my team needs accessible kind of at my fingertips, any documents I want to share, but I can actually chat about that and have a conversation. I do a lot of my best work in PowerPoint, so I can have conversations with people about how we want to comment on the slides. I can expand the thread and see all the comments that people have been sharing on that, all within that chat experience. Now these files, this PowerPoint file, I added it or the person who added it clicked on the paperclip just to upload it. You can also bring files in from elsewhere in Microsoft Teams and from OneDrive. When the files come in, they just go into this Files tab here. This is actually SharePoint. Microsoft Teams is built on top of an architecture called Office 365 Groups. Every team is an Office 365 group. The membership for the team is equivalent. It is exactly the membership of the Office 365 group. All the admin policies and controls, naming conventions, privileges, etc. around Office 365 groups apply to Microsoft Teams. And the SharePoint site that is created for an Office 365 group, which we call the group site, is the site for my team in Microsoft Teams. We have a folder for each channel, so this is the social media folder. I can, of course, open in SharePoint if I want, but I have this kind of simple lens view right into my SharePoint document library, which gives me quite a lot of the capabilities that I would want to do in SharePoint anyway. But if I want to, of course, I can pop out. It's kind of an 80-20 thing. We like to minimize the context switching for most of the tasks, but always provide the ability to pop out. Now, one of the things you notice here is I can take that slide deck and do this thing called make it a tab. I was going across the top there with conversations and files. Well, I can actually take any document and make it an additional tab. So conversation, files, I'll talk about these other ones in a second. And now I've got a document, a PowerPoint, pinned as a tab. I've now customized this workspace for my team. We use this a ton. We'll tell people, oh yeah, we pinned that dashboard to a tab in this particular team or channel. Or our call down tree or our triage bar or whatever it is our latest marketing deck is pinned to a tab. It's just a convenient way to organize and customize the workspace. We have other tabs as well. With our GA on March 14th, we unveiled the Wiki tab, which provides think about it as a rich note-taking canvas along with the ability to @mention people within the notes and create kind of very rich posts and even have conversation threads about specific sections within that wiki, within that tab. We have Stream. Microsoft Stream is the enterprise video portal for Microsoft, of course. Planner is our Kanban lightweight task management board. Trello is coming soon, but Kanban is ours. Hootsuite is just an example of a third party that we're working with. We have a great SDK for adding tabs and connectors and bots into Microsoft Teams. You can see here they're getting a feed from Twitter with information that's coming in from a social media campaign. And then I think I got the PowerPoint that I added. And then if I click on the plus sign, you can actually see there's a really rich set of tabs that I can add, almost too rich. I think soon we're going to actually have to redesign this experience because we'll have more and more of these applications to integrate into Teams. I can pin any Microsoft Office document, Planner as I showed you, OneNote, of course, mentioned Trello, YouTube, websites, Smartsheet is a spreadsheet app, then a whole ton of these applications that can be pinned in and become part of that team workspace. And I can, of course, with all of these, pop them out, go to the rich experience, and also have a chat about them.
Awesome. So Dan, one quick thing, boy, we've got a lot of great interest and a lot of good questions. I'm going to jump in and ask some of the questions that's been coming in. I want to make sure that we address some of these questions that may have not been addressed. So somebody's asking, if we already have Office 365, do we get Teams right away? Is there a specific SKU that's available for it?
Yeah, great question. I got a slide, but I'll just talk to it. Microsoft Teams is part of all of these suite plans for commercial and education. So Business Essentials, Business Premium, E1, E3, E5, grandfathered in E4, and then the educational E SKUs as well. It's there with Exchange, SharePoint, Skype for Business, Sway, etc. It's on by default. You can license users on or off, turn the licensing plan on or off to govern access on a per-user basis. And for a period of time, we have a what we call a tenant-level switch that if you, for some reason, some unfortunate reason, really want to turn Microsoft Teams off for your entire tenant very quickly, you can do that. That will go away, and licensing, like with every other workload, will be the primary way of governing access. But it is there. It is on by default.
Got it. And we have this other question that popped up a bunch of times. Is Teams connected with Skype? Can I chat on Skype and show up in Teams and vice versa? Where's the history stored? All that good stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Let me show you what chat looks like as a way to cover some demo ground and answer that question. So everything I was doing up until that point was within a team, the chat within a channel and all the files and other applications I can bring in there. Within the private chat, I have a lot of the same affordances of chatting in a team. I have the rich formatting. I have, of course, the emojis and the stickers. I have file sharing, but it's actually through OneDrive, not through SharePoint, because it sits on my personal OneDrive for Business, shared just with those people. There's no group behind a private chat. We have group chats and private chats. So you can have multiple people. You can give it a name and favorite it. And then for the interop question with Skype for Business, for users who are in Skype for Business, we allow we provide a one-on-one chat interop. So I actually still get a decent number of folks, there are fewer and fewer now in Microsoft, who will ping me in Skype for Business, and that will show up in Teams as an IM coming in, and then I can chat to them from Teams to their Skype for Business and back. There are some limitations on on-prem, Skype for Business on-prem support, which we've documented online. But in general, it's a one-on-one chat interop, and that's an area we're continuing to certainly to look at and invest further in. So there was a question about the shared tech. Yeah.
Quick
Go
question.
ahead.
So if you chat like that, would that conversation still be in the conversation history and Outlook?
So for the Skype for Business user, it will be the person you're chatting with. For you, as the person on the team side, I believe it will be as well on your Skype, because we're essentially, in this case, for now at least, we're dual stacking the Skype for Business client inside the Teams client. And so depending on who you're talking to or who pinged you, we'll choose one or the other client stack within the chat experience. It's a decent solution for a one-on-one interop. Long term, I think it may be something we look at a different approach to. You had a question also about the technologies. Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams are based on the same set of media technologies for calling and video. We instantiate different versions of those depending on what different product requirements are. But a lot of the codecs, media relays, signaling stacks, etc., are shared and updated in concert across all of those. The chat service for Teams is completely different, however, from the chat capabilities, the IMMCU and Skype for Business.
Awesome. And based on your description, so it sounds like there's gossip and word on the street that Teams will replace Skype for Business. So it sounds like that's not the case at all.
Yeah, that's certainly not what we're saying right now. We're saying that Teams has a certain role, Skype for Business has a certain role. Teams is really about these high-velocity project teams. There are a really large number of Skype for Business scenarios that are not possible within Teams right now. And with the interop bridge, and then I didn't mention meetings, but also when I go to my meetings tab here, you see I've got some Skype for Business meetings here. I can click and join those from within Teams. And so even if I am, we have plenty of companies where they'll have a group of people who move into Teams and their primary IM is there and their primary meetings and calendar experience is there, but we don't want to make that an island. So with the interop, the chat interop, and with the click to join meetings, we provide the ability to still have those extensions back into the Skype for Business area.
Awesome, awesome. We have also a lot of folks asking about what's that R1 on your profile picture?
That's because the tenant that I'm in, my demo tenant, teamsforthewin.com, Teams FTW, is in ring 1, which is one of our beta rings. If you are in our beta program, you or some of your users may be in ring 3, and that would say R3 over your badge. It's just it's a debug spew. It's a little bit of a badge because some of the things that I sometimes demo or test in this tenant are a little bleeding edge.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Now, this is good stuff. So we see a lot of technical questions that I think will help us move to your next slides. I think your next few slides will cover some of the more technical details. Maybe let's go ahead and jump into the more deeper technical architecture.
Yeah, there's one quick screen I just wanted to pay off very briefly here. I talked about tabs as one extension point. Second one is bots, which I won't show you, but you can imagine bots are chat bots that you can chat with or have in a channel. The third is connectors. Think of these as message pumps that can push information, richly formatted information and actions into your channel. And so you've got a lot of developer ones here, of course, but also some social media and project management and CRM, et cetera. This is one of the things we get for free being based on Office 365. This is part of the same architecture for connectors in Outlook. All right, so I will take your cue there, and we will hop back to the slides. And I can talk a little about the architecture, some of the technical dependencies, and Docs, feel free to talk right over me for any questions that come up.
Sure.
So there are two primary technical foundation points for Teams. One is kind of the Office 365 Azure AD set of services and capabilities, and the other is the chat service that we have and the media capabilities around that. From Azure AD, of course, we get identity, the actual group membership, authentication, our guest support, external guest support, which we have publicly stated we're targeting for June, and we're very actively working on. We'll use the Azure AD guest capability, including an external Azure AD identity and authentication provider, or MSA, but within the tenants, managed within the tenant's AAD, within the host tenant's AAD. The group's infrastructure, of course, is shared across a number of workloads. Connectors I just showed you, that's a really cool capability we get from this platform. The Office web clients, I showed you a few of those. That's all embedded there. We have some custom views that we built for SharePoint and Planner, and we'll do more of those over time. And then on the flip side, or on the other kind of foot of the architecture, is this chat service. It's an Azure-based service. It is also distributed across the Microsoft public clouds and within the O365 compliance boundary. And there are other, I didn't mention media, but media is within the same bucket, and then there's other services there as well. If you go through our list of URL endpoints that you have to open up, ports and numbers, or FQDNs and ports, you'll notice that there's some interesting names in there. Those are all part of that chat service and overall family of services. I can talk a little about the technical requirements. We had a question on licensing. The E1, E3, E5, Business Essentials, Business Premium, any of the suite licenses. You have to be DIR synced up. You don't have to really have anything else in the cloud, though. If your Exchange is on-prem, there'll be a little less functionality. Those users can't create connectors, and we have some issues right now around reading calendar and other information for an on-prem or some of our dedicated customers. We're working through those. OneDrive is necessary for file sharing in the private chats, and so if you don't have SharePoint for the user, they're not going to get OneDrive, and they're not going to be able to do file sharing in the private chat. Our strong recommendation is enable Exchange, enable SharePoint, even if Exchange is on-prem, still have that enabled for the users, have that license for the users for online. Skype for Business is not a prereq. We just talked about some of the interop capabilities. And then archiving, e-discovery, compliance. That is all currently based on Exchange Online for the group mailboxes and user mailboxes where we store the data. So if you are an Exchange on-premises customer, the compliance capabilities are not as rich. You're required to basically download those and process those on your side. And we're doing some more investments there to support the on-prem compliance capabilities. Last thing I'll talk about is just some capabilities we have around deployment. SuccessWithTeams.com has a really long and richly detailed guide for how to deploy and use Microsoft Teams, both from an IT perspective and more of a user education perspective. Fast Track is our managed service for assisting customers in their deployment journey. There's a lot of new content and services there. I put the URL there. If you go to Office 365, I think enable, and then you go to the icon on the right for chat, you can see a bunch of that information. And then finally, we have a customer success kit with email templates, posters, and things like that. All of these are based on our own experience building and using and deploying the service within a large enterprise, and will hopefully be useful for your companies.
These are great resources, Dan. This is phenomenal. One question that did come up from when you were covering the technical aspects of it is there a way or administrative controls to have overview of what bots or connectors users end up connecting with, or right now it's not available?
Great question, Doug. So there are administrative controls over whether or not bots and tabs and connectors can be enabled, and for side loading, whether or not side loading is enabled. So if you have an app that you're developing that you want to side load in, you can turn that on or off. That's at a tenant level. At a team level, the team owner can see and manage the side loading of bots and tabs and connectors. Over time, we will be developing per user policies, and so you'll be able to do policy sets and apply policies like that on a user basis or a group of users basis. That's not something we support right now, though. So really tenant level and team level policies.
Awesome. Thank you. And there is a question on use cases. I want to bring one of your slides back. So as you can see, Dan mentioned around the use case of team is really on high velocity, team-based interaction and collaboration. It's not even a matter or a question of, should I use one over the other? What you'll find is throughout the whole Office 365 stack is there are certain capabilities for one platform, but alongside another technology as well. So as you can see with Teams, it deeply leverages other technologies such as OneDrive, SharePoint. Dan showed you the chat capabilities, which can be integrated with Skype. I love this slide where it shows you, just simple use cases. But more importantly, one of the great things at Fast Track, where Dan showed you a Fast Track website, I encourage everybody to go to Fast Track. There's a section there called Productivity Library. And the idea is, instead of figuring out, okay, what do I use this tool for, you look for a use case. You can say, I'm in HR, and I want to figure out how to better process invoices. And then as you look at that use case, the relevant tool would surface up, be it Teams or OneDrive or SharePoint or what have you. As you can see, this is very rich, but I encourage everybody, as you think about leveraging or rolling out Teams, is think about the common use cases that your business users would benefit from using Teams with. Now, we've gotten a lot of questions prior to this webinar. Okay, when do I use what? And certainly we can understand the interest around this, especially around all the workloads that Office 365 has. What we did, and it's a great resource for everybody at AvePoint, feel free to go to this website, office-365-groups, and we provided a simple infographic just to provide high-level guidance. I'm not saying this is the guidance or the perfect guidance, But this is something that we put together even for us internally. As Dan mentioned, they use it internally. They provide a lot of resources internally, which they're providing for customers as well, and we're doing the same thing. So at a high level, how should you think about when to use what, be it groups or teams or SharePoint? Really, we break it down into 3 factors, right? Like, who are you talking to? With whom do you communicate? If you're talking to a large audience, you want to broadcast to the entire company or across departments, and in that scenario, typical technologies like Yammer or SharePoint would be relevant. So if you think about Yammer, Yammer is a great organization-wide platform, especially if you want to solicit some kind of organizational-wide feedback. SharePoint is the same. If you're using SharePoint for your intranet, where you have a publishing page, where you publish information there, you want to broadcast out to a large audience, SharePoint is a great platform. For smaller audiences, and these type of audiences are typically more focused around specific goal or mission or project, and you want to chat within teams or 2 individuals, Microsoft Teams, as you've seen what Dan presented, is perfect. Personally, I love Teams. In fact, in my mind, I tell my colleagues, Microsoft Teams to me is the new Outlook, where I still use Outlook, don't get me wrong, where Outlook is, kind of everybody's command center. Now Teams is my command center. I engage with my colleagues around the world. We communicate there. We would collaborate. Our files are surfaced there through OneDrive. So Teams works really well for the colleagues I work with. OneDrive, certainly, I use OneDrive a lot for, one-to-one type of collaboration, and obviously Skype for Business for more of a directed, smaller audience type of engagement, communication, and collaboration. So that's one factor you might want to consider is, who is the audience? And then any audience, which is appropriate for all the audiences, obviously email. Email is here to stay. I still use email. And again, with email, I look at it and think about it as more asynchronous. It's not that fast pace going back and forth, although certain times that seems to be the case. So email works out well. But in addition, even if I'm on mobile, which certainly I use email a lot on my mobile device, the beauty with technologies like Teams, there's mobile apps as well. And all, the information and the conversation and collaboration also surfaces throughout. So that's just kind of a flavor of what a factor is. What I encourage you to do is check out, again, the website. So the second factor is you can think about the tone, how you express yourself. Is it formal or is it informal or any tone? And then the third factor is essentially the speed, how fast or how quick you want it. Is it high tempo, synchronous, or asynchronous, or any tempo? So I encourage you guys to check out that guidance, and we'll show some examples. And again, what Dan showed earlier, Success with Teams, they have a lot of resources there as well. We really want to jump into some of these questions. So we've solicited questions, and Dan and Michelle, feel free to jump in, from the broader community. So in the past couple of days, we've been going on social and just asking questions from experts out there and even MVPs as to what they want to know or learn more about Teams. So Dan, I think this is for you. This is from one of our good friends out in Germany, Matthias. Any chance we see private channels within the team coming in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something we continue to look at. We have some smaller progress in mind on that we think will alleviate some of the requirements there. One of the challenges of private channel, one of the requirements for private channels is I want to share my channel with I want my team to have it, and then there's one channel I want a few other people to come into it as well, kind of like guests in the team, but focused on the channels. That's definitely one aspect we're looking at. There's also the fact that you can pretty easily create multiple teams, but it's a little hard to organize them together in the experience, and that's something we want to look at as well. The notion of a pure, proper private channel as a subset of a team is something that's a little harder from a technical perspective, so we're continuing to think about more creative ways that we can address that. Nothing specific to share on that, though.
Awesome. Thank you. Jeff, I think you answered this already a bit down earlier. When will external guest access be enabled? Will there be a Slack to Teams migration tool or integration?
So the guest access is targeting June. Slack to Teams migration definitely something we've heard from customers and are thinking about. I don't have any specific commitment on that, though.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Maybe something we can definitely look into here. Lorian, our colleague down under, it seems to become a more all-encompassing interface for accessing working Office 365. What can we expect to see around bringing in conversation from Skype for Business or Yammer?
So I talked a little about the Skype for Business interop. I think our primary business goal there, experience goal I should say, is to make sure that there are no islands of conversations within a company and that people don't feel isolated just because of where they are in their tool choice or the deployment of capabilities within their company. Yammer is a little different because the target kind of swim lane for Yammer is different than the capabilities we have in Teams right now. So the way that I bring Yammer into Teams is actually through the connectors that I showed you. There's a Yammer connector, and I have a feed set up from Yammer. Anytime somebody says Microsoft Teams in one of our big Yammer network, or uses the hashtag for it, I get a message in a specific channel, and then I can triage and decide whether I want to pop over to Yammer and manage that. That's essentially my Yammer inbox, is that channel within Teams. We may do more in that area, but they're really different scenarios right now.
Awesome, awesome. Next question we've got from Dan Usher, a colleague down here in DC. When will Teams be available for our friends on Mac OS running Safari? I think he's talking about the browser version.
Yes, something we hear a lot about and are working on. I don't have a date on that. The one thing we are going to do is right now the error message page on Safari doesn't tell you how to download the Mac client, which is tragic. So we're going to fix that very soon. But the actual Safari client is something we're working on, but I don't have a specific date to share. I will say for a lot of these roadmap questions, we are building out the official Office 365 roadmap for Microsoft Teams. We have 40 or more things that we will be publishing to that roadmap once they're officially approved and dated. And so if you are a user of the Office 365 roadmap, you'll be able to see Teams show up there relatively soon.
Awesome. So for this next one, you answered the Yammer, and I think you touched on groups earlier as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add around groups conversation? I think this is more specific to the use case around people using groups on email. Is there a way to surface that in the conversation thread within the channel, for example?
Yeah, so one of the things that I showed when I was scrolling up in the channel history was an email that was forwarded into a channel. You can get an email address for your channel, send an email in, the formatting, the attachments, and the priority all replicate through, and then you can chat about that in the team. We are looking at, and we publicly said that we're committed to looking at even more ways that we can get email integration in and out of Teams. Another thing we hear a lot about is actually a group calendar or some kind of a calendar tab for Teams, something else we're also certainly thinking about.
Now, speaking of tabs, recently, as a Teams user, there's the Wiki tab and the OneNote tab. How do you guys look at those two things, and how are they different?
Good question. So we treat Wiki as kind of a collaborative, rich post construction, almost like a thread, but with a lot more richness to it, where people are working together and chatting and constructing that document, and really I use the word document kind of loosely, but constructing that page very collaboratively, building some content where they really want to richly interact with each other within that, mention each other, have a thread about each paragraph, that kind of thing. OneNote, there's certainly some overlap, but OneNote I think is more of a kind of your baseline note-taking and information sharing canvas for the team. We also know in the education space, which we just lit up a couple weeks ago, OneNote is very, very popular, and so we'll actually be making OneNote the default tab in education instead of Wiki for any team created there.
Awesome. No, that helps out, especially when you're talking about the @mention. You're right, because when you're in the OneNote interface, it's not like you can do @mention within OneNote. So to me, I think that's helpful. We already answered this question for Andy, the roadmap, so it's great. It's coming. We've got Asif. Is there enough room or even a business use case for small to mid-sized orgs using both Teams as well as Yammer? So, Michelle, what do you think about this question? So this is more around looking at the business use case. You work with a lot of different organizations, different sizes. So what would you say to Asif around this question?
I think there is. Again, I think it comes back to looking closely at the use case or the scenario. But one that I'll bring as an example that when I used to work with smaller organizations and even worked at a smaller Microsoft partner, when we had teams or groups of folks at other organizations or even our own that needed to do like persistent team onboarding or things like that. So let's say you come into a small development team or you come into a small marketing team and there's a set of standard operating procedures, you know, go here to find this, do that, that kind of stuff. You know, using that wiki tab you guys were just talking about in Teams, it's a really nice, clean use case for things like that, where something like Yammer probably wouldn't be the best for that particular use case. So again, I think it comes down to what you want to use it for and looking for those opportunities to best leverage the, you know, the best capability for the thing you're trying to accomplish. You know, I don't see Teams as being something that only large business can take advantage of.
Yeah, for me, Asif, if you're listening or tuning in, I think there's a place for both Teams and Yammer. So again, Teams is more of the smaller group, fast-paced interaction, collaboration, whereas Yammer I look at as more of a broadcast. And sure, you can still engage and collaborate with a broader team, but Yammer for me, the strength of Yammer is the ability to discover as well, where you typically won't because you're not even looking for it. Certainly, if the organization is quite small, and Teams would work out for that purpose as well, broadcast, yeah, I could see using Teams alone would suffice. Our colleague out in EMEA, Newt, would it be possible to see the chat from Teams in embedded view in SharePoint like we can do with Yammer? It's a good question. Dan?
Yeah, that's a great question. Great suggestion. Nothing specific to say on that. We are looking at across Office the right appropriate ways to surface Teams and make sure people are wherever they are, Teams follows them, but nothing specific on that request.
Okay, great.
Next I was going to say, Doug, for all these feedback ones, there's a light bulb in the lower left corner of the desktop and web apps for giving feedback that goes straight into user voice. You can vote and create new ideas and have people vote on those. We look at that religiously. We have a community manager on my team dedicated to managing that. We talk to users there. We flight new ideas by them. It's a great tool. I definitely encourage you to share these and other ideas through the feedback button.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I've used that. Sent in feedback as well, so that works out really well. This question comes from our colleague Renee out in Singapore. What kind of organizational requirements are needed to get started successfully with Teams? Can any part of a company get started using Teams, or are there certain factors that help getting started with it and improve usage and value? Michelle, what do you think? I mean, how did you guys get started? I know you were part of the initial program with Microsoft. So how did you guys get started with Teams?
Yeah, this ties a little bit back to what I was talking about earlier in the session around identifying those groups and work patterns that are going to lend themselves most easily to leveraging something like Teams. And that's why I highlight some of the generational work preference differences. You know, when we looked at our organization for Teams, we identified groups like my own. I work in digital workplace transformation, so one would think people that are passionate about that within our company would be good candidates to take on using Teams in business scenarios within Avanade. So we also looked at enabling it for users or kind of showing off those capabilities early on to some of our younger workforce that works in a more like fast-paced, iterative fashion. We have client groups that are working on agile projects, and we have internal marketing teams that work on things like building out, let's say, demos to show off one of our new offerings, and they can use that very light planner integration really quickly to do that like Kanban backlog kind of prioritization really easily. So we really looked at both the generational overlay the working groups that tend to adopt newer tech first, even within an organization like ours where we dog food everything, there are differences in our culture and how people work, and then making sure that we made those people, they were trained well and they understood the capabilities first. We used those use cases to then show off internally the success to get broader adoption across Avanade. And we also use things like the focus groups I mentioned earlier. We call it the Fab 50 influencers around this capability, where there can be kind of open dialogue about is this a good use case, or how we use it for that. And so that's how we did it at Avanade.
Wow. Now that's awesome. I know we're on top of the hour, and this question from Tamara, I think we've already addressed it earlier. But we still have over 60 questions. So, Dan, Michelle, do you think it would be okay if we answer all those questions and publish a blog? We'll hit you up and we'll do a little FAQ within the next few weeks. Does that work for both of you?
It's good for me, and I'm trying to work through them in text as fast as I can.
Awesome, awesome. Well, for those who joined us, thanks again for spending this hour with us. Hopefully it was beneficial to you. This session is recorded. You'll get a link to the recording so you can share it with your colleagues. And we'll also post all these questions up on a blog so you can review it. And for those questions we weren't able to answer, we'll definitely answer those and put up a quick FAQ blog post. Other than that, thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Michelle. And we look forward to hearing from everybody and catch you on the next webinar. The slides will be up on SlideShare. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
All right, thanks.
Thank you all. Bye.